Right now, you're trapped. You don't even realize it, but your emotions are controlling every decision you make. That argument you had yesterday? You fell into a trap. The anxiety keeping you up at night? Another trap. The resentment you're holding on to? Trap. The ancient Stoics identified these emotional prisons over 2,000 years ago, and they left us a map to escape. But here's what nobody tells you. Most people will stay trapped their entire lives because they mistake these feelings for truth. They're not. And in the next hour, you'll learn exactly how to break free. Section 1. The reality check. Let's start with what happened to you this morning. Maybe someone cut you off in traffic. Maybe you checked your phone and saw a message that made your stomach drop. Maybe you looked at your bank account. Whatever it was, you felt something. Anger, fear, disappointment. And then what happened? You believed it. That's the first mistake everyone makes. We experience an emotion and immediately accept it as reality. The Stoics called this assenting to impressions. And it's the foundation of every emotional trap you'll ever fall into. Here's what actually happened in that moment. An external event occurred. Your brain generated a chemical response. That response created a physical sensation. And then, this is the crucial part, your mind created a story about what it all means. But here's what the Stoics understood that most people miss. That story, it's optional. Epictetus, who spent years as a slave before becoming one of history's greatest philosophers, put it simply, it's not things that upset us, but our judgments about things. Not the traffic, not the message, not the bank account. Your judgment about them. Now, before you think this is just ancient philosophy talk, let's get specific. Because there are 4 emotional traps that catch almost everyone, and each one operates the same way, by making you believe the story your mind creates is the truth. The first trap is the one you probably fell into today. Section 2. Trap number 1, the catastrophe spiral. The first trap is called the catastrophe spiral, and you've been in it more times than you can count. Here's how it works. Something goes wrong, small thing, big thing, doesn't matter. Your mind immediately jumps to the worst possible outcome. You miss a deadline at work, and suddenly you're picturing yourself unemployed and homeless. Your partner seems distant for one evening, and you're convinced the relationship is over. You feel a pain in your chest, and you're already planning your funeral. One thought leads to another, each one worse than the last. It spirals, fast. The Stoics had a specific term for this. They called it being swept away by impressions. Marcus Aurelius warned about it constantly in his personal journals. He'd catch himself doing it even as emperor. One setback would trigger thoughts of total collapse. But here's what makes this trap so dangerous. The catastrophe feels real. Your heart races, your palms sweat. Your body produces the exact same stress response as if the catastrophe was actually happening. So your mind takes that as confirmation. See? This is serious. The fear proves it. It doesn't. The fear proves nothing except that you're human, and your ancient brain is doing what it evolved to do. Scan for threats and amplify them. Seneca watched people destroy themselves with this trap. He wrote about a friend who worried himself sick over a business deal that never went bad. The man didn't lose his fortune. He lost his peace of mind, imagining he would. Seneca said he suffered more in imagination than in reality. How many hours have you spent suffering over things that never happened? How many catastrophes have you lived through in your mind that never touched your actual life? The Stoics noticed something crucial. We treat future disasters as if they're happening now. We pile today's reality with tomorrow's fears and yesterday's regrets. We're never just dealing with what's actually in front of us. So here's the escape route for this trap. And it's not what you think. The Stoic solution isn't positive thinking. It's not affirmations or pretending everything's fine. It's something called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils, sounds dark, right? But here's the twist. Instead of accidentally spiraling into catastrophe thinking, you do it deliberately. You sit down and imagine the worst-case scenario. Really imagine it, not in a panic, but calmly, rationally. And then you ask one simple question: could I survive this? Not, would it be pleasant? Not, would I want this? Just, could you survive it? Marcus Aurelius would imagine losing his power, his wealth, his reputation. Epictetus, who had actually lost everything as a slave, would remind himself it could happen again. And what they discovered was liberating. Yes, they could survive it. You could survive it. Once you face the catastrophe head-on, instead of letting it chase you, something shifts. The trap loses its power. Because you've already been there in your mind, calmly, and you've seen that even the worst case doesn't destroy you. The catastrophe spiral only works when you're running from it. The moment you turn around and look at it directly, it stops being a monster and becomes just another challenge you're capable of handling. But there's a second trap that's even more common, and this one doesn't come from fear of the future. It comes from anger at the past. Section 3, trap number 2, the resentment loop. The second trap is the resentment loop. And unlike the catastrophe spiral that pulls you into imagined futures, this one chains you to the past. Someone wronged you. Maybe yesterday, maybe 10 years ago. They said something cruel. They betrayed your trust. They took something from you, and you remember it. Every detail, every word, every feeling. You replay it over and over, in the shower, during meetings, late at night. Each time you run through it, the anger feels fresh, justified, righteous even. Here's what's actually happening. Every time you replay that memory, you're not remembering the past. You're experiencing the injury again, right now, in this moment. Your body releases the same stress hormones. Your blood pressure rises, your muscles tense. The person who hurt you, they're probably not thinking about it at all. They've moved on. They're living their life. But you're carrying them with you everywhere. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "How much more harmful are the consequences of anger than the causes of it?" Think about that. The original wrong hurt you once, but the resentment, that's hurting you every single day, multiple times a day. You're doing to yourself what they could never do. You're giving them permanent residence in your mind. The Stoics saw people consumed by this trap. Senators who couldn't let go of political slights. Soldiers who held grudges for decades. Ordinary people who built their entire identity around what someone did to them. And here's the cruelest part of this trap. The resentment feels productive. It feels like you're doing something, like you're holding them accountable, like your anger matters. It doesn't, not to them, only to you. Epictetus had every reason to fall into this trap. Beaten by his master, leg permanently damaged, robbed of his freedom for years. But he understood something that most people never grasp. Resentment isn't justice. It's a prison where you're both the prisoner and the guard. He said, "Any person capable of angering you becomes your master." Read that again. The person you resent controls you. They live rent-free in your head. They dictate your emotional state without even being present. So what's the escape? The Stoic approach isn't forgiveness in the way most people think of it. It's not about saying what happened was okay. It's not about reconciliation or pretending you weren't hurt. It's about understanding a fundamental truth. That person acted according to their nature at that moment. Maybe they were ignorant, maybe they were damaged, maybe they were weak. But they couldn't have acted differently with the understanding they had. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily. He'd remind himself, when you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, today I will deal with meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, envious, and unsocial people. He wasn't being pessimistic. He was being realistic. People will wrong you. It's not an exception. It's the rule. And when they do, you have two choices. You can carry that weight for the rest of your life. Or you can understand that they acted from their own confusion and pain, set down the burden, and walk away lighter. The Stoics called this sympathia, understanding that everyone is struggling with their own ignorance. Even the person who hurt you is a prisoner of their own mind. Here's the practical escape route. When resentment appears, ask yourself 3 questions. First, is holding on to this anger changing the past? No, the past is fixed. Your anger doesn't rewrite it. Second, is this resentment improving my present moment? No, it's poisoning it. Third, will this grudge matter on my deathbed? Almost certainly not. Seneca put it brutally, life is short. We don't have time to hate people. And he was right. Every minute you spend in the resentment loop is a minute you're not spending building something meaningful. But here's where it gets interesting. There's a third trap that's subtler than both catastrophe and resentment. This one doesn't feel like a trap at all. It feels like protection. It feels like wisdom. And that's exactly why it's so dangerous. Section 4, trap number 3, the control illusion. The third trap is the control illusion, and this one is sneaky because it disguises itself as responsibility. You believe you can control things you can't. Your partner's mood, your boss's opinion, the economy, other people's choices, the weather, traffic, your health, the outcome of your efforts. And because you believe you can control these things, you exhaust yourself trying. You manage, you manipulate, you worry, you plan for every contingency. You try to force reality to match your expectations. And when it doesn't work, because it can't work, you feel like a failure. This is the trap that creates the most suffering because it turns every uncontrollable event into a personal defeat. The promotion goes to someone else. You failed. Your kid makes bad choices. You failed. The project doesn't work out despite your best effort. You failed. But here's what the Stoics understood. You didn't fail. You just tried to control what was never yours to control in the first place. Epictetus built his entire philosophy around one distinction. He split everything in the world into 2 categories: things within your control and things outside your control. That's it. 2 categories. And here's what shocked his students. The list of things within your control is incredibly small. Your choices, your judgments, your responses, your effort, your character. That's basically it. Everything else? Outside your control. Other people's opinions, the results of your actions, your reputation, success, failure, life, death, all of it. Outside your control. Most people hear this and panic. If I can't control outcomes, why try? Why work hard? Why care? But that's not what the Stoics said. They said focus your energy entirely on what you control and accept everything else as it unfolds. Not passively, not with resignation, with active indifference to outcomes. Marcus Aurelius commanded armies, made life and death decisions, ruled an empire, and yet he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." An emperor with actual power, reminding himself daily that he couldn't control outcomes. Here's what happens when you fall into the control illusion. You tie your peace of mind to external results. Your happiness depends on things going your way, and things rarely go your way. Not because you're unlucky, because that's not how reality works. You can control your preparation, not whether you get hired. You can control your honesty, not whether people believe you. You can control your training, not whether you win. You can control being a good parent, not who your child becomes. And when you try to control the uncontrollable, you create suffering, anxiety about the future, anger when things don't go your way. disappointment when reality refuses to match your expectations. The escape from this trap is radical, and it requires practice. You separate process from outcome. You commit fully to your effort and completely detach from results. Not because results don't matter, but because they're not up to you. Seneca explained it like this: an archer can control their stance, their breathing, their aim, their release. They can practice until every movement is perfect, but once the arrow leaves the bow, the wind might shift, the target might move. None of that is within the archer's control. A good archer focuses entirely on the shot and accepts wherever the arrow lands. You do the same. You show up. You do your best work. You act with integrity. And then you let go of the outcome. Completely. This isn't giving up. It's the opposite. It's focusing all your power on the only place it actually works: your choices in this moment. Here's the practical exercise. Take any situation that's causing you stress right now. Write it down, then draw a line down the middle of the page. On one side, list everything about this situation that's within your control. Be honest. Be strict. If you can't directly control it with your choices right now, it doesn't go on this side. On the other side, list everything outside your control. Other people's reactions, the timing, the outcome, all of it. Now, here's what the Stoics would do. They'd focus 100% of their energy on the left side, and they'd practice indifference to the right side, not carelessness. Indifference. They'd acknowledge it, prepare for various possibilities, but refuse to tie their peace to it. Because here's the truth that most people spend their whole lives fighting. You don't control as much as you think. And the moment you accept that, the moment you stop trying to force reality into your preferred shape, you become free. But there's one more trap, the fourth one. And this trap is different from the others because it doesn't feel like suffering. It feels like pleasure. It feels like escape. And that's exactly why it's the most dangerous of all. Section 5. Trap number 4. The comfort addiction. The fourth trap is the comfort addiction. And unlike the other traps that cause obvious pain, this one feels good. That's the problem. You avoid discomfort, always, automatically. A difficult conversation, you postpone it. A challenging workout, you skip it. An uncomfortable truth about yourself, you rationalize it away. A scary opportunity, you find reasons why it's not the right time. Every single day, you make dozens of choices designed to keep you comfortable, and every single one of those choices keeps you trapped. The Stoics noticed something that modern psychology has confirmed. Comfort is not neutral. It's not a baseline you return to. Comfort is actively weakening you. Every time you choose the easy path, you become less capable of handling difficulty, and life is difficult. Not sometimes, always. The question isn't whether you'll face hardship. The question is whether you'll be strong enough to handle it when it arrives. Marcus Aurelius was born into luxury, adopted by an emperor, could have lived his entire life in comfort. Instead, he deliberately practiced discomfort. Cold baths, hard beds, simple food. Not because he enjoyed suffering, because he understood that comfort was making him weak. He wrote, "It is in times of security that the spirit should be preparing itself for difficult times." While things are calm, you should be building strength. But most people do the opposite. When things are calm, they maximize comfort. And then when difficulty arrives, they're unprepared. Here's how this trap operates. Your brain is wired to avoid pain and seek pleasure. That wiring kept your ancestors alive. Don't touch fire. Don't fight the bear. Seek safety. But in the modern world, that same wiring is destroying you. Because the things you need to do to build a meaningful life are almost all uncomfortable. Honest conversations, difficult work, facing your flaws, taking risks, building discipline, and the things that feel comfortable in the moment, scrolling, binge watching, avoiding, procrastinating, numbing. These things feel like relief, like self-care, like you're giving yourself a break. You're not. You're keeping yourself weak. Seneca watched Rome's elite destroy themselves with comfort, unlimited wealth, unlimited pleasure, unlimited avoidance of anything difficult. And what did it produce? Weakness, anxiety, emptiness, people who had everything and felt nothing. He wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Think about that. The person who avoids all discomfort never discovers what they're capable of. They never build real confidence. They never develop strength. They stay fragile forever. Here's the cruelest irony of the comfort addiction. The more you avoid discomfort, the more uncomfortable your life becomes, because you're not building any capacity to handle difficulty. So smaller and smaller challenges feel overwhelming. You avoid having one hard conversation, so the resentment builds, and eventually you're having a much harder conversation or a divorce. You avoid the discomfort of exercise, so your health declines, and eventually you're dealing with chronic pain and disease. You avoid the difficulty of learning new skills, so you stagnate, and eventually you're dealing with the existential dread of a wasted life. Comfort now creates catastrophe later. The Stoics had a practice for this. They called it voluntary discomfort. Epictetus would sleep on the floor occasionally. Seneca would fast. Marcus would remind himself that he could lose everything, not to punish themselves, to build immunity to hardship, to prove to themselves that discomfort wouldn't destroy them. Modern society tells you the opposite. It promises that if you just buy the right things, use the right services, and avoid enough discomfort, you'll be happy. You won't. You'll be weak and anxious and dependent on maintaining conditions that you can't control. Here's the escape from this trap. You practice discomfort deliberately, small doses, consistently. Take a cold shower. Have the conversation you've been avoiding. Do the workout that scares you. Sit with boredom instead of reaching for your phone. Face the fear instead of rationalizing it away. Not all at once, not as punishment, as practice. Because here's what the Stoics discovered. Discomfort is temporary, but the strength you build by facing it is permanent. Every time you choose the hard path, you become more capable, more resilient, more confident, and eventually something shifts. The things that used to seem unbearable become manageable. The challenges that used to make you want to hide become opportunities to prove yourself. You stop being someone who needs perfect conditions to function. You become someone who can handle whatever comes. Seneca said it perfectly. A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a person perfected without trials. The discomfort isn't the obstacle to a good life. It's the price of admission. So these are the 4 traps: the catastrophe spiral, the resentment loop, the control illusion, the comfort addiction. Right now, you're probably caught in at least one of them, maybe all 4. And here's what you need to understand. These traps don't exist outside you. They're not being done to you. You're creating them with your own thoughts and choices, which means you can escape them. But knowing about the traps isn't enough, because there's a deeper pattern beneath all 4. A master trap that makes the others possible, and once you see it, everything changes. Section 6. The Master Trap. The story you believe. Here's what connects all 4 traps. Every single one of them requires you to believe a story. The catastrophe spiral. You're believing a story about the future. The resentment loop. You're believing a story about the past. The control illusion. You're believing a story about your power. The comfort addiction. You're believing a story about what you need. And none of these stories are true. They're interpretations, judgments, mental constructions. but you treat them as facts. This is the master trap, the belief that your thoughts are reality. Right now, your mind is generating thoughts, constantly. Most of them you don't even notice, but some of them catch your attention, and the moment they do, something happens. You identify with them, you become them. A thought appears, this is going to go badly, and suddenly you're not observing a thought. You are anxious, a thought appears, they shouldn't have done that, and you're not watching a thought. You are angry, a thought appears, I can't handle this, and you're not noticing a thought. You are overwhelmed. The Stoics had a specific practice for this. They called it objective representation, and it's the key to escaping every emotional trap. Here's how it works. When something happens, your mind immediately interprets it, adds meaning, creates a narrative, and you believe that narrative is the event itself. Someone doesn't text you back. That's the event. Your mind says, they're ignoring me, they don't care, I'm not important to them. That's the story, and you feel hurt. Not because of the event, because of the story. Marcus Aurelius practiced this constantly. He'd strip away the interpretation and look at what actually happened. Not, this person disrespected me, but this person spoke words I didn't prefer. Not, this is a disaster, but this is an event that didn't match my expectations. Sound cold? It's not. It's freedom. Because once you separate the event from your story about the event, you realize something profound. You're not upset about reality. You're upset about your interpretation of reality. And interpretations can change. Epictetus taught his students to practice this with everything. Someone insults you. The objective fact is they moved their mouth and made sounds. Your interpretation is that those sounds diminish your worth. But do they? Really? Your worth doesn't depend on their opinion. Their opinion is just another event in the world. You're the one adding the meaning that it threatens you. This sounds like semantics until you actually practice it. Then it becomes the most practical tool you have. Let's take a real situation. You get passed over for a promotion. Here's what happens in most people's minds instantly. I failed. They don't value me. I'm not good enough. My career is over. I wasted years here. That's the story. And it feels true because it came from your own mind. But strip it down to objective representation. What actually happened? A position was filled by someone else. That's it. That's the only fact. Everything else, the failure, the lack of value, the wasted time, that's interpretation. And here's where it gets powerful. Once you see its interpretation, you can choose a different one. Not a delusional one, not toxic positivity, just a different interpretation of the same facts. A position was filled by someone else. This means I can focus my energy on other opportunities, or improve specific skills, or realize this company isn't the right fit, or understand that one decision doesn't define my worth. Same event, different story, completely different emotional result. The Stoics weren't saying ignore reality, they were saying see reality clearly, without the layers of judgment and meaning you automatically add. Seneca explained it this way: we suffer more in imagination than in reality, not because imagination isn't real, your suffering is real, but because imagination adds so much to reality that you end up fighting phantoms. Here's the practice that changes everything. When you feel trapped in any emotion, pause and ask yourself one question. What is the objective fact here, stripped of all interpretation? Not, he's trying to hurt me, but he said these words. Not, this is unfair, but this happened and I wanted something else to happen. Not, I can't do this, but I don't know how to do this yet, and it feels uncomfortable. Every time you strip away the story and see the bare fact, you create space. Space between the event and your response. And in that space, you have power. This is what Viktor Frankl discovered in the concentration camps. The one thing they couldn't take from him was his ability to choose his response, not his feelings. Those came automatically. But his interpretation, his story about what it meant. He watched some prisoners collapse in despair. Same camps, same horror. Different stories about what it meant. Some found meaning even there. Purpose, reason to survive. Not because the camps were good, but because they chose a story that allowed them to remain human. You're doing the same thing every day on a smaller scale. Events happen. You tell stories about what they mean, and those stories create your experience of life. The master trap is believing those stories are fixed. True, the only possible interpretation, they're not. And the moment you realize that, every other trap becomes escapable. The catastrophe spiral. That's a story about the future. Recognize it as a story, and you can choose a different one. The resentment loop. That's a story about what the past means. See it as interpretation, not truth, and you can release it. The control illusion. That's a story about your power. Understand it's a story, and you can focus on what you actually control. The comfort addiction. That's a story about what you need. Question that story, and you can embrace discomfort. But here's what most people get wrong when they learn this. They think the solution is to replace negative stories with positive ones. To think positively, to affirm, to visualize. That's not what the Stoics taught. They taught something more radical. Don't believe any story completely. Hold all interpretations lightly. Focus on what you can actually know and control. Section 7. The daily practice. Building your escape route. Understanding the traps is one thing. Escaping them in real time is another, because knowing doesn't change behavior. Practice does. The Stoics didn't just philosophize. They built daily practices, routines that trained their minds the same way athletes train their bodies. And these practices are what actually create change. Here's the truth nobody wants to hear. You've been training yourself into these traps for years, maybe decades. Every time you spiraled into catastrophe thinking, you strengthened that neural pathway. Every time you rehearsed resentment, you made that pattern more automatic. Every time you tried to control the uncontrollable, you reinforced that habit. You're not weak, you're well trained in the wrong direction, so retraining takes time. But it's possible. The Stoics proved it. Modern neuroscience confirms it. Your brain is plastic, changeable. You can build new patterns. Marcus Aurelius had a morning practice. Before dealing with the chaos of empire, he'd sit and prepare his mind. He'd remind himself of what he controlled and what he didn't. He'd anticipate difficulties. He'd practice objective representation. He didn't do this once and become enlightened. He did it every single day for decades. His personal journal, what we call meditations, is literally him repeating the same lessons to himself over and over, because he needed the repetition. You do too. Here's a practical morning routine that takes 10 minutes. 10 minutes that can change your entire day. First, before you check your phone or let the world flood in, sit quietly, just 30 seconds, and ask yourself, what do I actually control today? Your effort, your choices, your responses, your integrity. That's it. Everything else, outcomes, other people's reactions, circumstances outside your control. Remind yourself of this, not as philosophy, as fact. You're setting your intention to focus your energy where it actually works. Second, anticipate one difficulty, not to be negative, to be prepared. What's one challenging thing that might happen today? A difficult conversation, a stressful meeting, bad news? Now strip it down to objective representation. What is the actual event without interpretation? Then ask, if this happens, what's within my control? Not the outcome, your response, your character, your choice to stay grounded. Marcus called this the premeditation of adversity. By facing it in advance, calmly, you remove its power to trap you. Third, practice gratitude, but not the fake kind, not the Instagram kind, the Stoic kind. Look at something you have right now, your health, your home, your ability to read this, your next breath, and recognize it could be gone, not to scare yourself, to appreciate it. The Stoics practiced negative visualization. They'd imagine losing what they had, not morbidly, clearly, because when you recognize that everything is temporary, you stop taking it for granted. That's your morning practice. 10 minutes. Control inventory. Anticipate difficulty. Practice appreciation. But morning preparation isn't enough, because the traps don't wait for you to be ready. They appear in the middle of your day when you're stressed and distracted, so you need real-time practices. Interrupt patterns. Ways to catch yourself mid-trap and change direction. Here's the most powerful one. The Stoics called it prosos, attention, paying attention to your own mind. Most people go through their entire day on autopilot. Thoughts appear, emotions arise, reactions happen, all automatically, and they're just along for the ride. You can't escape traps you don't notice entering. So throughout your day, practice checking in. Set 3 alarms on your phone, random times. When the alarm goes off, pause, just for 30 seconds, and ask, what am I thinking right now? What am I feeling? What trap am I in? Not to judge yourself, to notice, because awareness is the first step to change. Maybe you're spiraling into catastrophe. You catch yourself. Okay, what's the objective fact here? What's the story I'm adding? Is this story useful? Maybe you're rehearsing resentment. You notice it. All right. Is this changing the past? Is this helping my present? Do I want to carry this person with me all day? Maybe you're trying to control something you can't. You recognize it. What can I actually control here? Where should my energy go? Maybe you're avoiding discomfort. You see it. What's the hard thing I'm running from? What would it cost to face it now versus later? Just noticing creates space to choose differently. Epictetus taught a specific technique for this. When a difficult emotion appears, pause and say to it, you are just an impression and not at all what you appear to be. You're not denying the feeling. You're recognizing it's a mental event, not reality itself. That small shift in perspective changes everything. Here's another real-time practice. The pause button. Between stimulus and response, there's a gap, usually microseconds, and in that gap, your automatic patterns take over. But you can widen that gap, make it conscious. Something triggers you. Before you react, count to 3. Breathe. Ask one question. Is this response going to help? Not, is this response justified? Not, do I have a right to feel this way? Just, will this help? If you're about to send an angry email, will it help? Maybe. Sometimes confrontation is necessary, but usually it'll create more problems than it solves. If you're about to spiral into worry, will it help? No, it never does. If you're about to avoid a difficult conversation, will it help? Short term, yes. Long term, no. 3 seconds. One question. It sounds too simple to work, but the Stoics used it for centuries, because simple doesn't mean easy, and it doesn't mean ineffective. Now here's the evening practice. This is where you actually learn and improve. Seneca reviewed his day every single night. He called it the examination, not to beat himself up, to learn. Spend 5 minutes before bed. Ask yourself 3 questions. First, where did I fall into a trap today? Be specific. When did you catastrophize? When did you hold on to resentment? When did you try to control the uncontrollable? When did you choose comfort over growth? Don't judge it. Just notice it. You're collecting data. Second, what did I do well? Where did you catch yourself? Where did you choose differently? Where did you practice the principles? Celebrate those moments, not because you're perfect, because you're improving. Third, what will I do differently tomorrow? Pick one specific trap, one specific situation, and decide in advance how you'll handle it. If resentment showed up today, tomorrow when it appears again, you'll practice the questions. Is this changing the past? Is this helping now? Will this matter on my deathbed? If you avoided discomfort today, tomorrow you'll face one uncomfortable thing deliberately. One trap, one day, one improvement. Marcus Aurelius did this for decades. He'd write things like, "Today I met difficult people, but I prepared for this. I wasn't surprised. I maintained my character." Or, "Today I got angry over small things. Tomorrow I'll remember that people act according to their nature." He was talking to himself, coaching himself, building new patterns slowly. You do the same. Morning preparation, real-time awareness, evening review. This is the practice, not complicated, but consistent. Because here's what actually creates freedom from these traps. Not one moment of insight, not one good day, but the accumulation of thousands of small choices, each one slightly better than the last. Each time you catch yourself catastrophizing and choose to focus on facts instead, you're building strength. Each time you notice resentment and choose to release it, you're creating freedom. Each time you recognize what you can't control and refocus on what you can, you're developing wisdom. Each time you choose discomfort over avoidance, you're becoming more capable. And over time, something shifts. The traps that used to catch you every single day start appearing less often. When they do appear, you notice them faster. You escape them easier. You're not perfect. You still fall in, but you're not stuck there anymore. The goal isn't to never feel fear, anger, or discomfort. The goal is to not be controlled by them, to feel them, recognize them as impressions, and choose your response anyway. That's what the Stoics meant by freedom, not the absence of difficult emotions, but the ability to maintain your character regardless of what you feel. And that ability. Section 8. The question that changes everything. Here's the question. Why escape these traps at all? Because if you're just escaping to be more productive, to make more money, to impress more people, you're missing the point. You're just trading one trap for another. The Stoics didn't practice these principles to optimize their lives. They practiced them to live well, and living well meant something specific. It meant becoming the kind of person who could look back at their life without regret. Not because everything went perfectly, but because they showed up with character regardless of what happened. Marcus Aurelius faced plague, war, betrayal, and the slow death of his body. His life was objectively difficult, but he died without regret because he maintained his integrity through all of it. That's what escaping these traps actually gives you. Not an easy life, not a comfortable life, but a life you can respect. Here's what most people don't realize until it's too late. The emotional traps aren't just stealing your peace. They're stealing your potential. Every hour you spend in the catastrophe spiral is an hour you're not building something meaningful. Every day you spend rehearsing resentment is a day you're not creating value. Every week you spend trying to control the uncontrollable is a week you're not developing actual skills. Every month you spend choosing comfort is a month you're not growing. The traps aren't just making you feel bad. They're preventing you from becoming who you're capable of being. Seneca watched this happen to people constantly. Talented people, intelligent people, people with every advantage, and they wasted their lives. not because they lacked opportunity, because they were trapped in their own minds. He wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." Most people aren't living. They're managing their emotional traps, surviving, coping, reacting. And then one day they wake up and realize decades have passed. They're the same person they were years ago, same fears, same resentments, same limitations, just older. That doesn't have to be you. But here's what it requires: a decision, not just about practices or techniques, about who you're going to be. The Stoics believed you have one job in life: become excellent at being human. Not perfect, excellent. And excellence meant developing 4 qualities. Wisdom, the ability to see things clearly, to separate fact from interpretation, to judge well, to understand what matters and what doesn't. Courage, the willingness to face difficulty, to do what's right even when it's hard, to speak truth even when it's uncomfortable, to keep going when you want to quit. Justice, treating people fairly, contributing to something beyond yourself, adding value to the world, leaving things better than you found them. Temperance, self-control, the ability to regulate yourself, to delay gratification, to endure discomfort, to maintain balance. These 4 qualities, wisdom, courage, justice, temperance, they're not personality traits you're born with. They're skills you develop, and you develop them by facing exactly the situations that trigger your emotional traps. The catastrophe spiral, it's an opportunity to practice wisdom, to see clearly instead of imagining disasters. The resentment loop, it's a chance to practice justice and temperance, to let go of what doesn't serve and treat others with understanding. The control illusion, it's training in wisdom and courage, to accept what you can't change and focus on what you can. The comfort addiction, it's a test of courage and temperance, to choose growth over ease. Every trap is also an opportunity, not because the trap is good, but because overcoming it builds character. And character is the only thing you take with you, the only thing that can't be taken from you, the only thing that matters when everything else falls apart. Epictetus lost his freedom, his health, his comfort, but he never lost his character. And because of that, he influenced millions of people for thousands of years. You probably won't influence millions, neither will most people. But that's not the point. The point is this: when you're old and looking back at your life, what will matter? Not how much you accumulated, not how comfortable you were, not whether you avoided all suffering, not whether everything went according to plan. What will matter is whether you lived with integrity, whether you faced your fears, whether you grew instead of staying small, whether you contributed instead of just consumed, whether you became someone you respect. That's what's on the other side of these emotional traps. Not happiness in the way most people think of it, something deeper, something the Stoics called eudaimonia, human flourishing, a life well lived. And here's the beautiful part: you don't have to wait. You don't have to fix everything first. You don't have to be perfect. You start now, today, this moment. The next time you feel yourself spiraling into catastrophe, you pause. You ask what's actually happening versus what you're imagining. That's wisdom. The next time resentment appears, you recognize it's hurting you more than them. You choose to let it go. That's temperance. The next time you try to control what you can't, you redirect your energy to what you can. That's wisdom. The next time you want to avoid discomfort, you lean into it instead. That's courage. Each choice builds character. Each practice makes you stronger. Each day you show up despite the difficulty. You become more of who you're capable of being. And over time, something remarkable happens. The external circumstances of your life might not change much. You'll still face setbacks. People will still disappoint you. Things won't always go your way. But you'll be different, fundamentally different. The things that used to destroy your peace for days will barely register. The people you used to resent will just be people acting from their own confusion. The outcomes you used to desperately try to control will just be outcomes you accept or adapt to. The discomfort you used to avoid will become the price you willingly pay for growth. You won't be trapped anymore, not because life got easier, because you got stronger. Marcus Aurelius wrote something profound near the end of his life. Confine yourself to the present. Ask yourself what is unbearable about this moment. You will be embarrassed to answer. Think about that, not what's unbearable about your life, or what's unbearable about your future. What's unbearable about this exact moment? Almost nothing. The moment itself is almost always manageable. It's the stories you add that make it unbearable, the catastrophes you imagine, the resentments you rehearse, the control you're desperately grasping for, the discomfort you're avoiding. Strip all that away, and you're left with this moment, just this moment. And this moment you can handle. Then the next moment comes, and you can handle that one too. That's how you live, moment by moment, not trapped in imagined futures or remembered pasts, not fighting for control you don't have, not running from growth, just here, now, responding with character to whatever appears. The Stoics called this living in accordance with nature, not your emotional nature, your highest nature, your capacity for wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. And when you live that way, something shifts. You stop needing life to be different than it is. You stop waiting for the right circumstances to be happy. You stop depending on external validation to feel worthy. You become free, not because you escaped life's difficulties, because you developed the strength to face them without losing yourself. That's what's possible. Not someday, not when you're perfect, not when you've mastered everything. Now, today, with the very next choice you make. The traps are real. You'll fall into them again, probably tomorrow, maybe in an hour. That's okay. That's being human. But now you know what they are. You know how they work. You know how to escape. And most importantly, you know why it matters. Not for productivity, not for success, not for comfort, for character, for growth, for living a life you can respect. The Stoics gave you the map. 2,000 years of wisdom distilled into practices you can use today. The catastrophes you're imagining, most won't happen. And the ones that do, you can survive. The resentments you're carrying, they're not justice, they're chains. You can drop them. The outcomes you're desperately trying to control, they were never yours to control. Focus on your effort and let go of the rest. The comfort you're protecting, it's making you weak. Choose difficulty, choose growth, and through all of it, remember this. You're not your thoughts, you're not your emotions, you're not your circumstances. You're the one who chooses how to respond to all of it. That power, nobody can take it from you. The only person who can give it away is you. So stop giving it away. Stop believing every story your mind creates. Stop fighting battles you can't win. Stop avoiding the very experiences that would make you stronger. Start now. Start small. Start imperfect. But start. Because on the other side of these emotional traps isn't just peace. It's power. Real power. The power to maintain your character regardless of what happens. The power to face any difficulty without breaking. The power to live without regret. That's what the Stoics discovered. That's what they're offering you. The question is, will you take it? Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, they're not just names from history books. They're people who faced the same traps you're facing right now, and they found the way out. Not through positive thinking, not through avoiding reality, through seeing clearly, choosing wisely, and building character one decision at a time. The catastrophe spiral, the resentment loop, the control illusion, the comfort addiction. You know them now. You've seen how they work. You've learned how to escape. But knowledge without action is just entertainment. So here's what happens next. You close this video, and within minutes, maybe seconds, one of these traps will appear. Life will do what life does. Something won't go your way. Someone will frustrate you. An opportunity for discomfort will present itself, and you'll have a choice. Fall into the trap like you always have, or pause, notice, choose differently. That first time you choose differently. That's when everything starts to change. The Stoics didn't promise easy, they promised possible. And that's what this is, possible, for you, starting right now. So the real question isn't whether these traps exist. The real question is what you're going to do about them the next time they appear. Because they will appear. Today, tomorrow, always. And when they do, you'll know exactly what to do.